This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV 24/7.
These are the news bulletins that NDTV delivers to television screens across the world every day. And iNews is the tune that keeps things working in harmony. iNews is a newsroom computer system from Avid, which makes the execution of a news bulletin much easier than it used to be. Newsrooms heavily depend on iNews. In fact, every single screen that shows up on the viewer's television only does so because it is explicitly listed in iNews. But what exactly does iNews do?
iNews is the one-point place where all the information, whether it's NTV India, it's 24/7, it's Profit, it all comes in there. Without iNews, people will not know where to put in their scripts, where to put in their supers, where they can go to, make a rundown, what they can take on air, what is ready to be taken on air. Anchors won't know where to write links. It's basically like a little notebook that everybody works on and everybody can go to know what the day's events are, what we are doing. It's your one-point place for information gathering and information dissemination.
iNews is the lifeline of news. If iNews collapses, then we just don't work. We pack up and go home.
iNews, it hangs very often. It's very difficult to find old stories, especially stories before 2004, 2005, I think. So there should be a way of rectifying that.
But before we take you through the execution of a bulletin from scratch, let's talk a bit about where we are right now. This complicated-looking room with the screens and buttons is the PCR, or the Production Control Room. It is from this place where live news is fired at you. Simply put, if the newsroom is the Titanic, then the PCR is the bridge. If not on the Vigil, then you'd sink. It is here that the producer follows the rundown on iNews, gives commands to and coordinates with the video mixer, audio mixer, caption producer, and others. And let us not forget Leila, the voice of the PCR.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And this is the input desk. News constantly streams in here from various sources as the team monitors newsworthy events from all around the world. These are then passed on to the output desk.
So how's the prep for the 4 o'clock bulletin going?
Oh, it's getting along. Tabulating my points for the meeting. Okay, so will you come up to the newsroom? Come up to our floor?
There are two stories. One is on the whole Vidharb thing and the other is on this Rubina story.
A call on which stories to pick for the bulletin is made during the output meeting, where reporters, input heads, and the producers brainstorm and try hard to sell their stories to the output head. The output editor then prepares the final rundown on iNews. A rundown is the list of news stories that are going to be aired. It begins with the headlines of the day and generally ends with a soft story. And don't even ask what happens in the event of an iNews failure.
Two things. Firstly, there's a paper backup. So everybody starts scribbling on paper, links are written on papers, instructions are given on paper. And the other thing is then at that particular point of time, we move in our most experienced people into PCR and on the desk.
And my hair is turning grey for many things and that is one of them and I will kill anybody.
We had the son of one of our editors come in one day and he was generally happily sort of, playing around, and I think somebody just gave him a computer and said, why don't you just, because I think, they were having a meeting and the guy just wanted him busy. And Vedant, who was, that was the boy's name, and I think he was all of 5 years old. I don't know how, but he got onto iNews and he accidentally went on an on-air rundown. And there was a bulletin that was there and he went delete, 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 delete. So there was a PCR, which just was seeing slugs being deleted. There was an anchor, every link was just going away. They had no clue what was happening. Everybody was like, what's going on? And nobody knew because this kid was sitting in one corner of the newsroom going delete, delete, delete. And it was quite a day.
Reporters mainly work outdoors, where they carry out their shoots and execute their stories after they have been sanctioned by the input and output desks. Once they return to the newsroom, they feed their stories into the rundown, which is being prepared in iNews for that particular day. The camera people who accompany the reporters take their video footage and ingest them at the videotape library.
We even have the facility of opening the English rundown, so we even get to know what the other channel is doing side by side. So suppose I have my 12 o'clock rundown being done, so I can even open the English rundown at 12 o'clock and sort of compare the, how the structure looks like.
Of course, iNews is like a lifeline for us. It's like a moody girlfriend or boyfriend you can't do without, and and does anything on its own, and you don't have a control over it.
Work begins at the edit bay when the output editor calls in for a video sequence to be created for her rundown, maybe even a few minutes before it goes on air. The edit bay relies on iNews to keep an eye on the rundown, as stories are constantly being dropped and added. Once the sequences are prepared, they are matched to the rundown on iNews. Meanwhile, the output editor reaches out to yet another person, the news anchor. The output editor monitors the rundown and stays on top of her game as the anchor keeps checking in.
Amitabh, why are you doing anything?
Well, I'm looking at the bulletin before that on iNews to see what the updates are, because I did the bulletin at 2. So, if there is any update from that, and there certainly is. In fact, our top story is changed completely.
Cool, yeah? We got another fresh business story coming in on telecom spectrum.
It's never all work and no play for the anchor. They get to visit the green room, where makeup artists help them look their movie star best. And that makes for one good-looking anchor.
This is what is called leap up. They shove all this nonsense stuff on our face.
Time देखो. बस हो गया. Richa, move.
Okay, Maya, race you to the studio.
Yeah.
It's showtime. The anchor rushes to the studio and the output editor makes her hurried way to the PCR. This is where it's all going to happen, where it's all going to have been worth it. An hour's worth of behind-the-scenes coordination with every department we've seen so far. Input, output, reporting, edit bay, and PCR. And let's not forget Leila.
5, 4,
This is NDTV.
2, 1.
And you're watching NDTV 24/7.